with questions I'm asking with Vanessa Nordyke. Vanessa is joining us. She is currently the Salem City Councilor for Ward 7, as well as the Executive Director of the CASA for Marion County, which is Court-Appointed Special Advocates.
Bingo.
Right, beautiful. She also served as the Assistant Attorney General in the Oregon Department of Justice and is running for the mayor of Salem.
That's right.
So, Vanessa, for the folks that are meeting you for the first time, how do you usually describe yourself beyond your resume?
Ooh, beyond the resume. Well, I love to say that I'm a very family-oriented dog mom. My family has deep roots in the city of Salem. My grandfather was a lawyer here. He used the GI Bill to go to Willamette Law School, and then he was at Oregon DOJ for his entire career, 1950 to 1980. My father is a lawyer in town, and now I'm a lawyer in town. And so we believe strongly in a career of advocating for others, in serving our community. So again, I'm trying to avoid answering from the resume question. I'm a person who thinks about my family every day, and I think about the people that I serve every day. And the specific community that I serve, foster children, is a particularly vulnerable community. So as I'm making decisions throughout my day, whether it's in an official capacity or an unofficial capacity, those are the things that are on my mind at all times. And if you want more of the fun-loving side of Vanessa, it is a thing. It does exist. I'm very musically inclined. A lot of people in the family have a musical background. My cousin plays cello, my dad plays piano, my sister and I sing. So I use music as my preferred outlet, and I love karaoke also.
So I feel like my next question is like, what's your go-to karaoke song?
That depends on what I am feeling.
So today, right now, what would you, if we were like, all right, we're going to do karaoke right now, what would you, what's your song?
I think Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. First, I can do it.
Right.
And I believe that. But secondly, it's a powerful song, and it's one that I think speaks to me and a lot of people. It's about the power of self-expression, and I think that Lady Gaga has done a lot in that regard to support and uplift people to celebrate who they are. And I really love that message of empowerment that she shares with her fans and with the world. So that's a great one. And besides, everyone gets excited when you hear that song. You got to do a catchy karaoke song, right? For sure.
Right. The quick little story, my son, who is now 14, when he was, I would say like 10, 12, 8 or 10, his school had a talent contest, and he did a dance to Bad Kids by Lady Gaga. Although the school called me like the day before and said, we can't play this song. So I had to find I had to do some magic and made it happen. Anyway, so you talked about your family and your family's work in the DOJ and in law, and your own work with foster parents, having been a foster parent and a CASA. I resonate deeply with that. But the question I asked you to sort of like invite you to this was, what does service mean to you?
I love that, and I was thinking a lot about what that question means. I think service is about giving a piece of yourself to someone else in a way that makes their life better. And when I think of that, I think of all the helpers, right? You remember Mr. Rogers and...
Yes, Mr. Rogers, I'm contractually obligated to say, Mr. Rogers was a Presbyterian pastor.
No kidding.
Yes.
This explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well,
okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I love that. That's a great tie-in. Jump in anytime. Yeah. No, I think being a helper is something that is in my soul. It is in my heart. It's in my family. And I see it happening all over the city of Salem. And how you serve, it depends on so many things. You can serve in so many ways. You can serve at the warming shelter that you guys sometimes provide here at your house of worship. You can serve by checking in on your elderly neighbor next door who lives alone. It doesn't cost you, and oftentimes acts of kindness don't cost a thing. You don't have to be a trained professional to do it. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be someone who hasn't, you don't have to be pure. You just have to want to help somebody else. And so that takes, in my opinion, so many forms. And I just encourage people to find the form of service that speaks to them It helps if it's something that you're naturally passionate about. But if you want to try something new, that's a great way to grow as a person also.
Sure. So when I think about, I could wax philosophical about Mr. Rogers and what he's meant to me and how he has shaped the way that I do ministry, the way I live my life and service and all that stuff. But I don't want to do that. So one of the things that in my own life of service and how, like, I loved your definition of sort of a little piece of yourself and it doesn't cost anything generally. Is there a moment that really shaped how you think about that or how you came to that understanding?
Yes, actually. I use this story often because it is true and it was a catalyst for who I became as a person. I was 13 years old and I was walking through the Salem Art Fair. We all know and love the Salem Art Fair, and you know that the kids' court section has been a big part of that to get kids engaged in the arts, interactive, thinking of art as expression, all those wonderful positive behaviors we want our children to learn. And as I walked by the kids' court, I saw a long line of young kids who were all waiting to have their faces painted. And I just saw the need. I saw an extra seat at the table, an extra set of paint brushes and a paint kit. And I had taken some art classes at Bush Barn Art Center. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate you funding my art education. And I didn't think twice. I didn't ask for permission. I just sat down and motioned over the next kid. Mm-hmm. And so my takeaway from that is you don't need permission to do the right thing. And you don't have to be Van Gogh or Picasso or someone trained at the Art Institute of Chicago or any prestigious school. Mm-hmm. You just have to have a heart for service and a desire to help others. And so I still have that kind of jump in head first approach. Sure. I'm definitely a doer. I'm an agent of change. I have lots of examples of that over my professional career. But wanting to dive in is, I think, really important because the need is usually urgent. And if you don't urgently address it, someone is going to get missed. And there's a lot more pressing concerns we have than kids waiting to have their faces painted like Spider-Man. But That was my first intro into it. And I've been a volunteer for this community ever since.
Yeah, I love that story. The idea of, I love what you said about permission. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily need permission. And I know as someone who has a similar mindset, sort of like jump in, and it doesn't always work out, but it has worked out far more than it hasn't, right? Like, and I love that idea. So, how does that moment and your understanding of service, how does that affect your service as a counselor now, as a city councilor, as CASA exec, and then hopefully, as a mayor here in the next few months?
Well, thank you. So there are some good examples. When I joined council, it was early November 2019, and I brought a lot of new ideas to council. And one of the first things I said we should do is have a mobile crisis team comprised of mental health and medical professionals, not cops. Mm-hmm. We have police. They have a very important role to play. But I knew that there was a gap in our public safety services. And I did my research. And so I brought it up at one of my very first meetings. And I said, hey, I've heard about this crisis team in Eugene known as Cahoots. And I asked the city staff point blank, why aren't we doing that? Have we considered doing something like that there? And I have to tell you, Greg, the first time I brought it up, I got the same reaction that I've gotten in other situations before. It's like, ooh, we've never done that before.
As a pastor for the last almost 20 years, that has never happened to me. No one has ever said, oh, we never, right? That's not the way we do it here. Okay, sorry. That's great. So,
fast forward, we now have that unit.
Yeah,
but
I heard about that.
It took years.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love as someone who has, I have a similar story. You were talking about your 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. I've been serving in soup kitchens since I was about 10. And that was because my parents and the church that we went to, they served in this soup kitchen in Atlanta. It was a men's shelter. And so at 10, I was wandering around the dining room asking people for milk, if they wanted milk or water or whatever. And so I've never been freaked out by houseless folks, really. I mean, I've had some fascinating, sometimes scary interactions, but I have those with people who have homes too. Right?
Exactly.
But I agree with you that I think the police have a very important role to play. And also, I think they sometimes get too much on them. Like they're asked to do too much like our teachers, but that's a whole other conversation. So in these kinds of conversations, in these kinds of issues where it seems to me such a we need mental health professionals, we need people with de-escalation training, we need people who like addiction training, those kinds of things, like Kahoot and others. How do you, when you're in leadership, when it gets complicated, how do you stay grounded in that sort of definition of service?
That is a really great question. Staying grounded in the definition of service. Well, you make sure that it's not, when you communicate the need, when you're trying to explain to people why we need to do things differently, you have to make sure that you realize that it's not about me, the person with the idea. It's about the people who need this the most. So I believe you need to create a sense of urgency. You have to make clear to the folks that you're trying to persuade that bad things will happen if we do nothing. And I also try to remind folks that doing nothing is a policy choice. Staying silent is a policy choice. And so people need to be aware of that. So when it comes to having this service orientation, you have to focus on how it will address the need and what the potential side effects are that will also be a benefit. So some of my key talking points for bringing this crisis unit on board was that this will actually reduce pressure on our other public safety resources. It means that instead of trying to send a fully fledged fire truck, like the gigantic, beautiful engines, instead of sending them there and an ambulance there, you've got like 5 or 6 firefighters and paramedics committed. It's overkill. It's not the right resource. And don't take my word for it. My own fire chief has told me that. It also will free them up for higher acuity calls. It reduces strain on our emergency department, one of the busiest emergency departments on the West Coast. It reduces strain on law enforcement, which is why our police chief is also a proud supporter of this program. So you have to focus not only on how it will solve an immediate need, but how other stakeholders are going to be positively affected by it.
Yeah, I like that idea. One of the things that I was sometimes something, because of my value base and where I'm coming from, that groundedness, I'm able to say this is, and it seems obvious to me, and I'm trying to sort of explain that, and I recognize that often people are not swayed by statistics and they're swayed by stories, right? Like I think Jesus did that, which can be really confusing. It'd be way easier if you're just like, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. So when your values, like obviously care and like efficiency are values, but that might not be, like my values might be coming from a different place, or the police chief or John Q. Public. How do your personal values show up when decisions aren't easy? So when there's a budget shortfall, or when there's opposition is not even the right word, but just somebody sees the solution to the problem differently, or even the problem differently. How do you stay? Because you said earlier, it's not about you, right? It's about the folks that are in need, and also the reason that you are aware of those people is because of the values that you hold, I think, right? So how do you stay who you are in the midst of that complicatedness?
That is such a great question. Well, you mentioned the importance of stories as well as data. I'm a very data informed person. I like charts. I like pie charts. I love all the things that are statistical in mind. That was a big part of my undergraduate education. So those things matter to me, but you are right in that there are plenty of stories that you can share, and the stories are an opportunity to share your values along the way. So when you talk about the fact that there are persons who are struggling on our streets who don't need to be taken to the ER for the 20th time, who don't need to be thrown in handcuffs for the 20th time, but instead, if they were connected with the right resource, a peer support specialist at a place like Rock, or a case manager at Northwest Human Services, there are all these incredible nonprofits in the area under enormous financial pressure, I might add, but they're doing extraordinary and life-saving work. And the key is to try and find those stories while protecting the confidentiality of the clients themselves. When you are able to share those stories, I'm hopeful that it will make a difference. I've talked up warming shelters before, and I know I mentioned already, I'm going to give another shout out to that because it is so cold. At the time that we're filming this podcast, it is freezing in Salem, which makes it very unsafe for anyone living outdoors. And I remember volunteering at a warming shelter a couple years ago. It was during the pandemic. And so it was unfortunate because we were in a gym, and instead of being able to put a lot of people in the gym, they were socially distancing. So we had to, unfortunately, really restrict the number of folks who come in. But one of the guys who did come in was a young man, I would say probably early 20s, tall, gangly youth. And he had this gigantic grin as he was walking in. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. That's not the typical reaction when you see someone coming in from the cold. And as he approached the reception desk or the check-in desk, he blurted out loudly for anyone who wanted to listen. He said, "I just got a job at McDonald's."
Yes.
And that was just a huge win.
Right.
And, and the staff, cheered and celebrated that. And like, those are the kinds of wins. Those are the kinds of personal stories that you encounter. They're not scripted. They're not canned. They just spontaneously happen. And so warming shelters, that young man was able to spend the night there at that shelter and not have to worry about waking up in the freezing cold to start his first day of work, right? So there's stories along the way that I think can make a big difference and show your values too. I want all young people to be gainfully employed. I want all of them to be proud of where they work and to have, I call it the dignity of work. I think work is important for everybody. Of course, I'm a workaholic, so I'm certainly a fan.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
So I was thinking, thank you for that. And that was, you said a lot, and it was just sort of like my brain was spinning around. Just shout out that former CEO of Northwest Community Services, Paul Logan, is a member here at First Pres. So I've had some long conversations with him, and obviously dealing with our warming center, we work with a lot of our homeless, the folks that do outreach to our houses community. And the thing you mentioned about your story was this young man who had a job, but also couldn't afford to live, right?
Exactly.
So he was still at least in need of a place to stay, to be warm.
Yes.
And there's all sorts of conversations about livability and what that looks like.
Oh yeah.
And we have, how do you think we might increase that livability? So gainful employment for not just young people, but others. So how do we increase livability for Salem?
I'm so glad you brought that up because livability, and I call it affordability, is one of my top priorities as a counselor and as our future mayor. We are in a K-shaped recovery. K-shaped meaning that people who have considerable assets, think people who've got 401ks, pensions, they own their home free and clear. People with those kinds of assets are experiencing the upper point of a K, the one that is going up. But the other side of the K, the part that goes down, those are the people who are dependent on their wages for their income. And wages are not keeping up with the price of rent. They're not keeping up with inflationary pressures. And so this is happening not just in Salem, but really around the country. I read a national article about this in New York Times earlier today. We have plenty of assets that are hedged against inflation. And so the rich are not feeling the same financial pressure that our workers are feeling. And so livability is going to be a key issue for any mayor in the state of Oregon. This is impacting every single one of us. And so we have an opportunity to lean into that work or, again, do nothing. Because do nothing is still a choice.
Sure.
So let me talk about what I have done and what I would like to do more of. What I have done is really push the city of Salem to embrace managed shelter sites, a crisis team, and affordable housing, and more shelter overall. So when I joined council, not only did they say no to having a community response team like the one we now have. And by the way, that team is now called REACH. It stands for Rapid Engagement and Assessment Community Health.
I saw the photos. It was just this week you got funding for that, right?
We
recently.
We approved funding last year, but we still had to train up the staff, and so it launched very recently. So not only the city was opposed to that when I first came on board, they were opposed to the idea of the city of Salem helping with managed shelter sites. And you could see the consequences of that. If you remember the winter of 2019, when you had folks stacked up outside of the Nordstrom Mall and the old Rite Aid, that was right after my motion to create the first city managed shelter site had failed. And I would have loved to connect every single one of those individuals to a managed site where they had safety, where they had shelter, where they had garbage service, where they had a case manager on duty. So failure to do anything, sitting on your hands, has political and economic consequences for especially disproportionately affecting the poorest among us. So we eventually got people on board with it, and we ended up opening 3 managed shelter sites. We provided funding for that, and those managed shelter sites are now being independently funded. The nonprofits who are running those have now obtained funding from other sources. So that was one of the things we did. But affordable housing was another thing. When I joined council, it was not a priority of the city. It just wasn't. And over time, as we talked about what our priorities should be as a city, and you talk about like in a bullet point fashion, what should our priorities be? I said affordable housing. And I remember a member of council was like, really? I'm like, yes, really? Have you seen that? Anyway, it's now very much a thing. We have added hundreds and hundreds of more affordable units. Look at Sequoia Crossings, Redwood Crossings, Yaquina Hall, Mahonia Crossing. I mean, my goodness, there's a lot more happening in the affordability of housing context. We helped United Way get their cottage cluster for low-income seniors. That charges $500 a month for a low-income senior to have a tiny home all to themselves. And we helped make that happen by selling the land for a song to United Way so that they can focus their fundraising efforts on building on the land. I want to see a lot more of that.
Sure.
So as mayor, I want to push for more housing, more private-public partnerships. There's a lot more we need to do in that area because state eviction protections are ending. So this is about to get worse.
So I love your focus on affordability and affordable housing, and I have lots of thoughts about because as I said, I've been working with the House's folks and like different programs and different organizations for 30 years. And one of the things I want to sort of shift a little bit about livability is not just I think livability for the poorest among us is really important, like just so they can stay alive, right?
Sure.
But I was also thinking about reports that have come out recently about the number of people, the influx of people into Oregon, and for the next 20 years or 10 years, that Salem could increase in population significantly. Right. And one of the things that will be helpful for the city or just the way our particular capitalistic system works is taxes, right? And a tax base and bringing in people who can afford those taxes and who can then help. Those funding can be then helped to the lowest. So one of the things that I think is interesting about what I love about Salem, and one of the things when I was moving here that the church showed me was Minto-Brown Park and Riverfront Park, and that beautiful space, and then you just go walk for hours and hours. And but what I noticed, because I moved from Minnesota, just about an hour south of the Twin Cities, so I have some feelings this week. There were parks everywhere. There was green space everywhere. And do you have a vision for expanding those green spaces like Minto-Brown Park? I've heard folks talk about the lighting on the footbridge at Riverfront. Like, is it going to get fixed? Like and even at Riverfront, there's those bathrooms, which are amazing, that are locked all the time because of houseless people or something. At least that's the story. So how do we not only make it livable and so that people can stay alive, and then help them get to a space where they are then becoming part of a gainfully employed, I think is what you said, but also being attractive to folks to want to come in and be a part of something good, or have a place to take their kids or their dog, or those kinds of stuff.
Well, thank you.
I know that's a lot, but
that is a lot. I'll do my best to answer. I think this is also a huge part of why I'm running. Candidly, Greg, the office of mayor is the most underutilized resource in city government. The mayor should be championing our green spaces. The mayor should be actively recruiting entrepreneurs, families, people to move to our city, to support our economy, to help cultivate a thriving arts scene. I'm obviously an arts kid, since I've mentioned my Salem Art Fair connection, but there is no reason why Salem shouldn't be a regional hub for all kinds of things. The performing arts. We already have Iron Man. There's no reason why we shouldn't be attracting a lot more sports-oriented tourism to our area, because we have this incredible network of parks, because the city invested in a couple of footbridges, the one leading into Wallace Marine and the one leading into Minto, and it has now unlocked all kinds of opportunities for fitness events that are both local and, frankly, international, because Ironman attracts people from all over the world to participate. So the mayor should be the champion of Salem's green spaces, of our performing arts, of all of our cultural opportunities like World Beat. Front and center, that is your job, to be promoting the things that we're already doing well and to support wherever we can grow them. Now, in terms of adding even more green space, I will say we already have 90 plus parks in the city of Salem, and that includes Minto-Brown, which is significantly larger than New York City's Central Park. So because I care a lot about our budget, I want to make sure that we have enough money to maintain over 90 parks before we entertain adding more parks, right? And these small neighborhood parks are really a lifeline for the local communities, people who want to push their stroller to the local park, seniors who want to go and enjoy nature without having to drive their car if they have a car. So I think that we need to take full advantage of our existing green spaces and really do everything we can to promote Salem. And I think there's a lot that the mayor could be doing. We've all heard about a lot of businesses leaving Portland for a variety of reasons. And why isn't the mayor of Salem sending correspondents, driving up to Portland and recruiting them? Hey, we have industrial space here that is completely underutilized. We have commercial vacancies, and I assure you, they're going to be a lot cheaper than whatever the commercial vacancy rates are in the Portland area. So I think the Office of Mayor is really, it's just an untapped resource. And I just haven't seen what that office is truly capable of.
I think I like what you said there. Because one of the questions that I've been thinking. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and Dallas, Texas, and these giant metropolitan areas, and then since then have lived in Salem is the biggest town that I've lived in 20 years. I've lived in much smaller towns, but a lot of times Salem has a small town feel in a positive way, but also in that negative sort of like good old boys club mentality. And so like and I've been around long enough already. I mean, I've only been here 3 or 4 years, but I know some of who those people are, right? So we get this, Salem sometimes get this reputation as a good old boys club that we haven't done it that way, or that's not for us, that kind of stuff. What comes to mind when you hear that? Because I saw you're nodding as I'm talking, so I was just, so what comes to your mind, and then when you hear about, when someone says, oh, that's just Salem,
Well, what frustrates me is when I hear people say there's nothing to do in Salem, and that is so not true. We have several theaters. We had a comedy club in downtown Salem that wasn't getting enough support. We have the Elsinore. We have all kinds of student theatrical groups and all kinds of things that are happening.
Shout out to Children's Educational Theater, which
shout out
both my kids participate in.
Right, exactly. So I think that when I encountered pushback on things like that community response team, I did get pushback from folks at the time who thought, well, we just don't do things that way here. I'm like, well, why the heck not? Mm-hmm. I made sure to, adjust my language there since we're in the house of the Lord.
No, you're fine. Anything you say in here has probably already been said. And I might have been the one that said it. Yeah.
I might want to be, I'm just trying to be respectful.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much.
So yeah, I hear this reluctance to embrace what has already happened in Salem. Mm-hmm. I mean, we already have an art scene. We already have a diverse community. But I don't see our diverse community reflected in the highest levels of power here locally. I mean, if you look at our elected officials, it's pretty white.
Yeah.
If you look at who runs the boards of directors for most organizations, again, pretty white. Mm-hmm. When you look at how money is directed towards nonprofits even, again, there are powerful influences that happen behind the scenes where donors of means have the ability to influence outcomes, and they can make certain just by choosing, sort of like voting with your wallet. Mm-hmm. You can decide which organizations are going to thrive here and which are not. And so I think that Salem is so much more diverse now than it was even when I was growing up.
Sure.
I had a conversation with Salem Kaiser Public Schools this morning. We were talking about how to ensure our foster youth have access to all the educational resources they need. And I said, I just want to confirm, there are over 100 languages spoken in our local schools, right? And she said, yes. So I think that, Salem is slowly starting to realize that we have just a wonderful variety here, mm-hmm. and celebrating that variety is something to be positive about. So
if you become mayor, because I agree 100%, like I think our schools are like 46% Hispanic, and then my kids are part of the public school system, and I love public schools, and I will fight for public schools forever.
Yeah, it's a majority student of color. I don't remember the precise demographic breakdown, but it is a majority student of color population.
Yeah, so if you become mayor, how might we become like community-minded co-laborers? Like, how would you want to who would you want to surround yourself with? Mm-hmm. As you said, like sort of as we get up into this executive suites and the boards, get paler, even though the majority of the population, or a good portion of the population, we're a much more diverse population than that. So how would you seek to create more space for, or I don't even, not create, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think how to say this. Like, how would you get more people to be more involved?
Oh, well, I love that question because I have a track record there. There is a real trust gap between city government and everybody else. And so I feel that, again, one of the shortcomings currently is that there's a lack of transparency in city government. So I go out of my way to let people know what I'm doing, who I'm meeting with, what organizations I'm shining a light on. The fact that I shine a light on organizations is something I haven't seen a lot of local leaders do to the extent that I do it. I have a very active political Facebook page, it's Elect Vanessa Nordyke on Facebook. And I am always going online to show people, here's what council is doing. Here's where you can provide your input. Here are some amazing nonprofits and local community partners who are doing amazing things in the community. And every time I go to a nonprofit or a house of worship or any other stakeholder group who just wants to serve others and be a helper, I hear of people wanting to, wow, I really love what they're doing. I should sign up to volunteer. I do that all the time, Greg. When I delivered Meals on Wheels during the pandemic, I just told people, hey, I signed up to deliver Meals on Wheels. It's really easy, and I'm helping feed our seniors when they're absolutely terrified of the coronavirus. And they got more volunteers as a result. So that's something the mayor should be doing. They should be convening and informing people. That's how you build trust. And when you build trust, people will then feel comfortable giving. They want to know that they can make a difference. They want to see it tangibly. Photos and videos are really important. So yeah, I do take a lot of selfies and I take a lot of Facebook Live videos because seeing is believing.
So also I think that I've noticed, and I want to give just a quick shout out to Jacob Espinoza for what's happening in Salem, for like fighting for that against there's nothing to do in Salem, sort of, but folks I feel like, and Facebook is not necessarily a good place to find the pulse of the community, but they don't feel like city government is part of them. They're not part of it. And so how might you as mayor, with your videos or with your policies, or how make it feel like city government actually belonged to the citizens?
Oh, I love that. That is a big part of my campaign as well, because people feel a total disconnect. I'll give you an example. I'm door knocking because it's political season. And when I'm at the door, I'm talking to real people. And so many times that person on the other side of the door says, wow, I've never had a political candidate come to my door. I've lived at this location for 7 years. This is what one man said to me just a couple of days ago. He's like, I've never once had someone come to my door and ask for my opinion or ask me if I have any questions about what to expect from the office of mayor. So you, as the mayor, have to do the work. You have to meet people where they are. Don't expect people to read those overly long council agendas and show up to every single council meeting, which sometimes goes 3 or 4 hours. Our meeting Monday night started at 6 and ended just before 11 p.m. So it's not reasonable to expect people to come to you. You have to go to them. So there are lots of ways to increase the level of engagement from the mayor to the people. I'm one of the only councilors who regularly does a town hall with their residents. And I started doing that years ago. And as mayor, I would like to host more of those town halls. I make the rounds at my neighborhood association meetings. I haven't had a mayor attend any of my neighborhood association meetings in several years. I think Mayor Chris Hoy, came to one. But I don't remember Mayor Bennett doing that. I've never seen our current mayor at any of my neighborhood association meetings, and I have 4 of them. And they meet every month like clockwork. And again, Greg, I've been on council since 2019, so that's 6 years.
Sure.
So I don't see sufficient engagement. Also, because about a quarter of our population is Hispanic, the mayor should be hosting a Spanish-only town hall. Not the, we're going to translate it later town hall. Not the, no, you're going to eventually understand what the words are that we're saying because there's going to be a tape delay for the translation. No, we need it in Spanish from start to finish, top to bottom. And why not have community partners there too to encourage people to understand, here's how you work with the city of Salem. Have you thought about getting involved in our boards and commissions? Have you thought about leadership opportunities with the city of Salem? Not just here's how you can volunteer and start from the ground level. How can we get you in leadership in the city of Salem? These are things that I really want to do as our mayor. And once you're mayor, you have access to additional communication resources and staff support. So right now, as a city councilor, I have an iPhone. The mayor has a megaphone. There's a significant difference. There
Sure.
are many more official communications that the mayor could do. The mayor could be sending out emails once a month or once a week even saying, hey, here's what we did at city council. Here's where I'll be next. Here's the neighborhood association I'll be visiting. Here's my upcoming town hall. All of those things, I think, should become a new heightened expectation for our mayor.
I like it. One of the things I'm thinking about is like, how do you sleep? That's one question I have. The other question I have is, this is sort of why does anyone want to be the mayor of Salem? Like, it's a volunteer position. Like, there's no, I mean, you have, as you were talking, you have different access to different levels of power and influence that, but based on what I read, even if I disagree with the mayor or what doesn't matter, just like, why would anyone put themselves through that when they have like a job that's already hard enough as dealing with the foster care system and the state court system, which has challenges sometimes. I love it; they do great work, but it's just like, it's challenging. So why would you want this job?
I can't speak to others' motivations, but I know that I am a career public servant through and through, and I have the appetite and the willingness to do the work that suits the mayor beyond being a member of council. A member of council is expected to attend the meetings, fully engage in the dialogue, ask questions, participate in the vote. That's what a councilor does. The mayor runs all those meetings. The mayor should be speaking up and sharing his or her opinion. The mayor has meetings with people that the councilors don't have. The mayor's meetings with the county commissioners, with the police chief, the fire chief, and all these other stakeholders who contact the mayor's office who don't bother contacting the 8 individual members of council. So to me, there is a heightened expectation for being the champion, the cheerleader, and the communicator. That's what the mayor does on top of going to the meetings and voting yay or nay. Those things are great. Coming up with ideas, councilors should be doing that too. If you serve on council for 6 years or 3 years and don't come up with a single idea of how to make things better the whole time, I question whether this is the right job for you. But the mayor should be taking on that heightened role. Also, in times of crisis, the mayor's office cannot be silent. We are in a time of crisis right now. People are scared for their lives. We have had people come to council demanding that we do something about the fact that our migrant populations do not feel safe. And we've seen it doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. People are getting killed. People are getting abducted, detained, taken. Their human rights violated. Their human rights violated. And the silence from the mayor's office is deafening on this subject. Meanwhile, I've been bringing a declaration to council to declare a state of emergency. I've been working with our Human Rights Commission to organize a Know Your Rights training in Spanish and bringing a motion to council to create additional financial resources for vulnerable populations, including those impacted by federal law enforcement authorities. So your mayor needs to be a stable and steady presence who will respond to people in times of crisis, who will work across the aisle, and who will not only speak to a single group of individuals who think and feel the way she does.
I love it. Man, I almost said like, yeah, woo. No, one of the things I really appreciate, and you and I have met before and had a few meetings, but is your passion for your work and what needs to be done. But also it seems like my impression of you in this is that you're willing to listen to another perspective, and passion is welcomed, not, we don't want to like tamp it down as they like to do in Minnesota sometimes, ironically. So I really appreciate your time today and your willingness to come and talk to me and share sort of a little more about who you are and what your vision of being the mayor is. And I think that's great. Also, big shout out to Mano y Mano and Pecune, who've been doing work with the Hispanic community for years and have been sort of carrying the weight. And as a like really white dude who has been working with undocumented folks for a long time and immigrant communities for a long time, that they have my heart. So I want to give a shout out to all those people that are feeling less safe than they should be. But I want to ask you a few questions. These are a little more light, hopefully. A little lightning round. There's not much thought to them. Well, there's thought. I put thought in, but you don't have to put. So what's a place in Salem that reminds you why community matters?
Oh, I love that one. Well, I'm going to go with the YMCA across the street. I grew up going to the Y, and the Y has free membership for refugee families and foster families. So I like the fact that they're creating a space of wellness and fitness, regardless of your ability to pay. And it's centered right in the heart of downtown Salem. And so I think that when you do that, when you decide to open your business or nonprofit in the heart of downtown, you're opening it in Salem's living room, where people can take the bus and have a very short walk. So, and yeah, I'm a member of the Y, and I grew up at that Y in its former.
It's not nearly as nice.
Oh my! I mean, yeah. Shout out that they hired local architects to make that happen, and they just did an outstanding job. So there's opportunity for beauty and trauma-informed design if you have the budget for it, certainly. And bonus round, Salem Public Library. I've been going to the Salem Public Library since I was a kid. And that helps level the playing field. Talking about digital equity, there's a lot of people who log on to those computers to look for work, look for opportunities to improve their own lives. So I don't think people realize what an economic engine public libraries can be for helping folks. It's a third space where kids can go and get their homework done. If you live in a tiny apartment and you don't have a quiet place to do your homework, that's going to affect your academic performance. So the fact that the entire upper floor is all oriented towards everything from like the teen section to the interactive little kids section, the fact that we offer literacy programs in Spanish and English, like the Salem Public Library does an outstanding job building community.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time at the library.
Right on.
What is a habit or because we've talked a lot about some like heavier issues, and we know, and as you said, we're sort of in a time of crisis and state of emergency even. What are some habits or practices that help you reset when things get heavy? Like, so in my world, we would call those like spiritual practices or, those kinds of stuff. So what are some of the things that you might do that helps you stay sort of reset?
Cooking and walking my dog are really important. I also, although that's not going to be happening a lot between now and May 19, I do love to get out of town once in a while. If you have the time and the ability to travel internationally, you should. I mean, first of all, everyone assumes international travel is crazy expensive. It doesn't have to be. We have one of the highest standards of living anywhere in the world. You would be amazed how affordable it can be to travel elsewhere. But more importantly, you open your eyes to the opportunities and the possibilities of how other cities are run. You see other cities with robust transportation options. You see other cities that were created in a time when we didn't have an auto-centric culture, and everyone could walk down the street to get their loaf of bread, to have engagement, to have streets lined with cafes where people are encouraged to talk to each other. There's a lot you can do to just look at urban planning and design. And again, just having that open-mindedness, I think, is really important. If you want to lead an organization, you're convinced that you're the only one with the answers, that change shall never happen on your watch, that's not a leader. Mm-hmm. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to see how the needs of your membership change and evolve over time. Salem is changing and evolving over time. We have to embrace that. So I think if you have the opportunity to travel, whether it's getting on a plane or even just going to the coast, mm-hmm. The coast is a very spiritual place for me.
Sure.
When my parents divorced, my dad took my sister and I, loaded us up in the family van and took us to Lincoln City. And it was the first time that I saw the ocean. And we were in such an uncertain place as a family going through divorce. I was 9 years old. I was extremely confused. I don't think there's a good time to divorce.
Yeah.
But I have to say, 9 felt pretty bad because I was old enough to understand that we wouldn't be living together anymore. but I didn't understand why mommy and daddy couldn't stay together anymore. So there was immense confusion. It was a really emotionally challenging time for me. Went through a lot of therapy. But I still remember seeing the immenseness of the ocean, standing on the shore in Lincoln City, and just seeing that never-ending horizon. And it was both terrifying because it's like, wow, that's really unknown. What's out there? And what's going to happen to me? And what's going on in my life? So it was just a jarring moment that is like etched into your soul for all time.
Sure.
And so the fear of the unknown is still something that I struggle with because I like to have the data. I like to know the answers, but you will never have all the answers to life's questions, big and small. And so developing a comfort with that is something that I'm working on as an adult to this day.
What's a book or a podcast or a voice that shaped that your thinkings on leadership?
You're gonna laugh. Star Wars.
Oh, nice. Say more. You have to say more than that. I was gonna just go, okay, that one next, but no, you have to. You have to explain that one.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I grew up in an era of VHS tapes. Right. We didn't have Netflix or streaming and access to a never-ending supply.
I used to have to rent the VCR. So.
Wow. There you go.
I'm way older.
Now that's a time machine right there, Greg.
Right.
So we had like a handful of the same VHS tapes in the house. And so I would watch certain movies over and over again. And again, you know, right around the parents' divorce, I remember watching A New Hope for the first time. And there's that scene where Luke Skywalker emerges from the home that he was living at with Aunt Veru and his uncle. And he's frustrated. You know, he's just been told, like, no, you can't go. No, you can't go out with your friends. No, we need you to stay for harvest. And he walks out and he stares at the double moon sunset on the horizon. And then you have the John Williams score. And I
can't beat that.
It's extraordinary. It's a moment of longing, of seeing there are things out there. There's something there is so much opportunity out there, and I'm so ready to do this. I want to explore my future. I'm not articulating myself very well because I still get lost in the moment of that.
No, that's totally fine.
But he was looking out the horizon and wanting to know what his life would be like in the future. That's what I honestly felt he was thinking, like, what's out there for me? And as a kid, again, I volunteered a lot. I even did some international travel as a child. So I was around, around poverty in third world nations. And I started to realize the fact that there are so many people who are struggling who didn't have the privilege that I had of being in a middle class family where we could occasionally travel. And I was just starting to realize that there's a lot of people who need a lot of help out there. And what is my role? How am I going to help? How am I going to serve others? And I was already thinking about a career in public service as a kid growing up in Salem. And I didn't know what form that would take. And, you know, that was a moment that really helped define me. I still feel that even as a 45-year-old now, I know what my next initial move is. I'm running for mayor, and I'm going to be your next mayor.
Sure.
And I want to come back on your podcast to talk about how it's going, for sure.
No, that'd be great. Here's an easy one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
One word you hope people feel when they think about Salem's future?
I would say inclusive.
I love that. So I agree with you. Sort of my highest value is inclusion. And what that means often is some of my friends that are a little more on the left side of me, and I'm fairly far over there, think that I'm crazy because I talk to some of the people that are, some of the people I engage with, they don't get along, but I get along with them. And so being able to have a space for people who are in the queer community, who are immigrants, who are very conservative or come from a conserving background, right? Like I lived in like rural Midwest, so like you don't get much more sort of like down home, like salt of the earth folks. And I think I love that idea of inclusion. All right, so for our listeners engaging, local leadership, and this might be their first time that they've had a chance to. Most of our people, I think, will have some knowledge or experience of engaging with local leadership. In fact, we as a congregation, several of us went and spoke at a Senate meeting held by Senator Deb Patterson, around communication between hospitals and service providers when they were releasing, especially people to the houseless community. But with those that are maybe engaging with local leadership for the first time, what do you think they hope, or what do you hope they'll stay curious about?
What do I hope who will stay curious
The
about?
folks that are engaging with the local leadership for the first time, what do you want them to continue to be curious about?
How they can get engaged and how they can make a difference. I feel that we do strategic planning at the city. We recently held a lot of not town halls, but open houses to talk about our housing production strategy. I want people to stay curious about what is the city doing currently to respond to our greatest needs. What are they doing to promote livability? How can we hold our elected officials accountable? How can we be more transparent? It should be very easy to find all these things out, and we need to do a better job of that. But ultimately, I want people to be curious about how can I weigh in and provide input. Most people don't know this, but our budget committee, the city's budget committee, is actually called the Citizen Budget Committee because it's required by Oregon law. And that means you have to have equal numbers of elected officials and members of the public. And they decide our $750 million annual budget every year. And their vote counts just as much as mine does. So that's just one of the ways that people can get involved. We have boards and committees where a lot of people do not apply for them. And it's a missed opportunity. And I really want us to do a better job of that. So there's a lot more work to do.
Awesome. One of the things, here we host, and I've been a part of the Poor People's Campaign here in Oregon that was sort of shuttered over after COVID, but we've been restarting it. So every Monday we walk around, we meet here every Monday at noon and go to the Capitol, or we went down to the bus depot last week. But moral budgets are super important to us, and because we think that budgets are moral documents. So you may be seeing some of us asking those questions at those citizen budget meetings soon.
Yeah, no, I agree, Greg. Our budgets reflect our priorities. I'm a big believer. That's what I told Budget Committee when I interviewed to join as a citizen. I joined as a citizen in 2017. So even before I came to council, I already had several years of working on the city's budget. So I totally agree with that. And so when they consistently failed to fund the REACH team, or when they initially refused to fund other things that I thought would help save people's lives, that was a moral decision, for sure. And climate change is a great example. When I first joined council, we had members of council who were convinced that climate change either wasn't real or that there was nothing we could do about it, even if it was real. But eventually, over time, we voted to approve the budget for a climate action plan, which basically meant hiring a staff person to ensure that our climate action plan gets carried out. And even getting one started took a couple of opportunities. It takes time to get people on the same page. So I love when people show up and testify. It's really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us on Questions I'm Asking and answering a lot of the questions that I've had about, and just sort of sharing a little bit about your story. Good luck this May, right? May 19th is election day.
Yep.
You'll be getting because we're Oregon and we're awesome, you will be getting your ballot in the mail, and make sure you vote.
Absolutely. We should have vote by mail nationwide for sure.
Yes, that's a whole other podcast.
It sure is.
Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.